Hello, my name is Douglas Vogt. I'm the director of the Diehl Foundation as well as the author of the book I'll be going through in this series of videos. This is video A1, the first in the series. I don't know how many are going to be in here, but I'm going to go through the whole theory of multidimensional reality. Be quite a few. These are the subjects that this video will cover. I'm going to try to cover in brief the two different types or ways you describe the universe. The other scientists have thought that something was wrong with the current scientific philosophy. You'll have fun with that. The problem with university structure and getting grant money, that's the key of the problem of why nothing seems to be changing, and also how government controls the math and the science output and what people think. The weakness of mathematics, how the science philosophy was changed. So, we'll start in. In my introduction video, I think I failed to mention that I had almost the complete collection of the Loeb's classics. Here's my library. 252 volumes of the Loeb's classical library. The green ones are Greek. You know, the left side of the page is Greek and the right side is the English translation. And the red books are in Latin, the Latin on the left-hand side, the English translation on the right-hand side. Pretty good sized collection. I also have the Journal of Roman Studies from 1936 to 2008. And I also have a document imaging system where I had scanned in 55,000 pages, some from the Loeb's, and Old Testament stuff, and Jewish stuff, and Roman history, Greek history, all kinds of stuff. And it's a very, very good search and retrieval engine. You can search for almost anything. It's amazing what you come up with. Anyway, that's what I have. Now, if you're in a circle, as C.S. Lewis says, you might conclude that I might be in a circle, and that would be a good guess. This is the book I'm going to be going through today. The Theory of Multidimensional Reality. It's the third iteration of my original book, Reality Revealed, The Theory of Multidimensional Reality, which I wrote in 1977 and was published in 1978 in the beginning of the year. You can get this from Amazon, either as an ebook or a regular book, or order from your bookstore, and here's the ISBN number. Also, I wanted to say how we do the filming. All the videos we do is 1920 by 1080, but I know many people are searching for this stuff on a tablet or a cell phone, which is only 480 pixels horizontally. So the type isn't going to come out. You know, you're not going to. So many times I'm going to read some of the stuff for the benefit of those who are have a problem. They can't read it. And also, but I'll have plenty of pictures in when I really get into it. This first video is more of a philosophical one, so you understand where we have been and that other scientists doubted this matter theory of existence. They just didn't want to deal with it and trying to get grant money. Anyway, the first iteration was Reality Revealed, like I said. The second one was God's Day of Judgment in 2007, and yeah, that was the one that was done. This is the third. This book was, again, indexed by the Library of Congress, Q175, Science, Philosophy, String Models, and Quantum Theory. I don't want those who are theologians and the common folk get scared by that. I wrote it so everybody can understand it. Remember, I'm presenting an information theory of existence, and so everybody can understand it because of this clock cycle that runs through time, and that's what I'm going to cover in the second of this series. It'll be A2. That's right, 1B. Anyway, in the beginning, there were two philosophies of the universe. The earlier one is a Hebrew one, a Jewish one, which is namely, there's God, and there's the creation. We're the creation. The world we're in is this creation. The Greeks had another one. So anyway, Plato expresses this philosophy, and there's a reason why he does. In his book, The Republic, Volume 7, he goes into his analogy of the cave, where you have a cave and you have a light source. He has a fire, and he has a bunch of people walking in the back of a wall, dragging various articles. And you have another group of people in front of the wall, this wall in a cave, and they can only look straight ahead against the wall. And all they see is the shadows of these objects that other people are dragging backwards and forwards. It's kind of a weird sight. And what he's trying to say, what he does here is that, like ourselves, I replied, and they see only their own shadows or the shadows of one another, which the fire throws on the opposite wall of the cave. In other words, what we see in reality is just a shadow or an illusion or an image of what really creates the image or the object. And that's important. The other train of thought, belief, were the atomists, and they were Leucippus, 440 BCE, and Democritus, 420 BCE. They taught, and you can find this in Plato's The Sophists. In fact, you can find it in volume 7, page 371 of the Lobes. And I'll read it because it's kind of funny. Some of them, the atomists, drag down everything from heaven and the invisible to earth, actually grasping rocks and trees with their hands, for they lay their hands on all such things and maintain stoutly that alone exists which can be touched and handled. For they define existence and body or matter as identical, and as if anybody says that anything else which has no body exists, they despise them utterly and will not listen to any other theory other than their own. Does that sound like academia, or am I just barking up the wrong tree on this one? It certainly does. Okay, these are I'll give you a smattering of scientists, some very famous ones, that also felt something was wrong with this matter-oriented theory of existence. Like I said, there's only two ways to describe how the universe works. What we have, what we're stuck with, is this matter-oriented theory of existence, that matter is everything. Matter becomes energy, energy becomes back to matter, etc. The only other way to explain it is that information is the dominant thing in the universe, and it creates the matter world we live in. That's what I created 40 plus years ago, and as far as I know, I'm the only one on this planet that has. Okay, Arthur Eddington. As astrophysicist, the portraits from the National Portrait Gallery in London, I did have a license for using it. It's a gorgeous picture of him. He lived pretty late, to 1944, but it was before computers. If he lived into computers and digital world, he might have made the connection. Not in the dim past, but continuously by conscious mind is the miracle of creation wrought. He's saying the same thing I am right there. The idea of a universal mind or logos would be, I think, a fairly plausible inference from the present state of science theory. To put the consciousness crudely, the stuff of the world is mind stuff. Consciousness is not sharply defined, but fades into subconscious, and beyond that we must postulate something indifferent, but yet continuous with our mental nature. It is difficult for the matter-of-fact physicist to accept the view that the substratum of everything is of mental character. You're saying the average scientist, they're really like technicians. They aren't really philosophers. This guy and the others I'm showing you, they're more philosophers, which is really what you have to be in order to figure out how the universe really works. You have to see beyond the trees. Sir James Jeans, he died in 1946, same thing. If he lived longer, he might have made the connection. The universe begins to look more like a giant thought than like a giant machine. Mind no longer appears as an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We are beginning to suspect that we ought rather to hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter. We suspect it, the universe, is all waves and nothing but waves. He's right about that. The old dualism of mind and matter, which was mainly responsible for the supposed hostility, seems likely to disappear, not through matter becoming in any way more shadowy or instantiable than theretofore, or through mind becoming resolved into a function of the working of matter, but through substantial matter resolving itself into a creation and a manifestation of mind. All you have to do is replace the word mind with information on him and the previous guy, and they're practically there. But they never did anything with it. Like, how could you explain light, magnetism, and gravity if that was the case? They never did. Dear sweet Einstein, he's a little bit more amorphous about the whole, not that obvious. He's just saying that most scientists have a religious feeling about this stuff, but he's amazed at the harmony of the natural law, which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that compared with it, all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings is an utter insignificant reflection. He's kind of hinting, the most vaguely of all the scientists, that something's wrong. He just doesn't know what, but he dies in 1955, and again, it's before computers as we know it. Richard Feynman. In this article, he was complaining about how much calculations were going on to calculate 1 cubic centimeter of space. And he thought it was kind of ridiculous. How can all that be going on in that tiny space? Why should it take an infinite amount of logic to figure out what one tiny piece of space-time is going to do? So I've often made the hypothesis that ultimately physics will not require a mathematical statement. Keep that in mind when I cover the next section on math and its problems. That in the end, the machinery will be revealed and the laws will turn out to be simple, like the checkerboard with all its apparent complexities. Dr. Lee Simon, he's alive. I think he's a physicist, Waterloo, Canada. I'm going to read the whole section here because he's saying something that you'll understand. It sounds like what I've done may have fulfilled what he said. A successful unification of quantum theory and relativity would necessarily be a theory of the universe as a whole. It would tell us, as Aristotle and Newton did before, what space and time are, what the cosmos is, what things are made of, and what kind of laws those things obey. Such a theory will bring about a radical shift, a revolution, he's right about that, in our understanding of what nature is. It must also have wide repercussions and will likely bring about or contribute to a shift in our understanding of ourselves and our relationship to the rest of the universe. The theory of multidimensional reality and what I've applied it to fulfills that, every bit of it, especially the personal part. You will know why man was created. My theory of existence, the theory of multidimensional reality, can answer the three most difficult questions in the universe. Why was the universe created? If God created the universe, who created God? And finally, what is man's purpose in the universe? I answered it in chapter 12 of God's Judgement book. In 6 pages, could have done it in 3. The next is publish or perish. Most professors will understand what I'm getting at here. The publish or perish part is really the wrong end of the research. It's getting the money and why they get the money and how they get the money. I found an interesting, this stuff I already knew for quite a few decades. I found an interesting website you should try to go to. It's academia.stackexchange.com, questions, blah, blah, and this is the link where I found one of the articles. What was interesting in here is you have a whole bunch of scientists telling them what the experience they have trying to get grant money and what they have to do and how much money they get out of the grant money. Anyway, so this is what happens. The professors in the hard sciences get paid generally 9 months. The contract is for 9 months. The liberal arts, when I'm told, is like 7 months. they have to apply for grant money or another job for the missing months of salary. So this is what they have to do. They apply for grant money. The two that the majority out there is the National Science Foundation or National Institute of Health. And you have people with PhDs in some pretty strange subjects applying for grant money in a totally different subject or semi-related just because they have to get the grant money. Now, what's interesting, you'd think that the professor would get a decent chunk of this money. Well, their line here was that it is not unusual for a top professor to be directing $30 million in research grants every year. Well, that's kind of high maybe, but the comments we got below were basically very interesting from professors how to deal with this stuff. Anyway, the National Science Foundation limits them only to two ninths of their salary. In other words, they get the equivalent of 2 additional months' salary from their institution. If they get a grant for $2 or $3 million or something like that, from that money they have to go hire, helpers, people, students, outside consultants, and equipment to do the experiments. Or they may have to travel someplace. In geology, that's very common. You have to go travel. So whatever's left, or from the total, the only thing they're getting out of this is another two additional months of salary. But there's more complicated than this whole what's going on here. Once they apply for the grant money, it goes to National Science Foundation or National Institute of Health, where 3 or more other professors either work for the agency or are contracted outside to review the proposal. And if it's outside the scope of what they were taught or outside the accepted theories of that field, they don't get the grant money. So the professors can't really stray too far away from accepted theory, otherwise they won't get the grant money, and they need the grant money for, to get paid. And they're not getting paid a lot of money from the grant money. So the one who gets the money, the majority of it, is the school administrators. They could line their pockets. I came from Washington State. As I remember, the football coach got a salary of $500,000. He got twice what the governor was getting. Of course, Governor Inslee now is probably not worth even that, but that's another story. It's one of the reasons I moved from Washington State to Florida. Anyway, that's the problem. But what they've done here in essence, is institutionalize stupidity. So you have a wrong theory like global warming is caused by your hibachi in your car or anything else, instead of what it really is, which is the sun. So they only give money for the correct research, and they don't give you the money for anything else. So that's why you're seeing all these papers blaming mankind for everything. The weakness of mathematics. A friend of mine's more or less, I wouldn't say a math genius, but very, very good at math. He told me a number of things, and I've read enough stuff. Basically, you have to look at math like a tool. There's lots and lots of integrals to solve the area under a curve, and a lot of professors know the power of math. The real gift of math is really the mental process, the discovery process you go through to try to figure something out. But the math can only be looked at like a tool, because math can almost fit any kind, you can create almost any kind of reality you want with math. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's real, or you can actually have that in reality. I'll give a couple examples in a few minutes. The math won't prove faulty logic correct. It just isn't designed to do that. The philosophy has to come first. In the book I use an example of a builder and an architect. The builder uses saws, hammers, paint, concrete, wood, stuff like that to build a building based on the plans that an architect gave him. The plans are in essence like the philosophy. He can build it exactly as the plans say, but the house could, or the building could fall down or rot away in a couple of years. We had an example in Florida, in Miami. A position overhead bridge was built. I'm sure it was perfect to the to the designer's specs, the plans, and the damn thing fell down. So the tools are analogous to all the math formulas and stuff like that are like the tools of a builder. It cannot tell whether the philosophy is right or wrong. Another excellent example is video games. The characters that are generated in video games are really engineering DXF drawings or files. And the video card has to assemble these stick figures, put a shape on it, coloring, shadowing, put a voice on it, and it does whatever it's been programmed to do inside the program. Now, in this program, you can have an algorithm that says that that character can jump out of a building 15, 20, or 30 feet and then land, and after jumping from a 3-story building, and he keeps running. In real life, that doesn't happen. You'd break just about every bone from your toes up to your hips, or at least one of them, and you're not flying 15, 20, or 30 feet that way. Within 3 or 4 feet, you're dropping like a rock at 32 feet per second. So the point being is, the programmer put mathematical algorithms into the program which said this character could do this. But in real life, he can't do that. But in his model, he can. The same thing goes for, on the theory of relativity and stuff like that. Einstein never said what gravity was. He just said how to deal with it and what the effects of gravity are on other objects that come near it. In essence, well, his general theory of relativity was proven right only because his calculations was for a star behind the sun after an eclipse was closer to a classical explanation of that star, of the angle of it and stuff like that. So they figured, okay, he was right, his equations were right, but he never tried to say what created gravity, because you really have to know what mass is. If you don't know what mass is, kiss it off. This is a famous mathematician. He died in 84. Paul Dirac. I think he was in Cambridge. He was an atheist, if there ever was one. Probably the predecessor to Stephen Hawking, who was also an atheist. His example was this. Well, he thought it is more important to have beauty in one's equations than to have them fit experiment. In other words, if your experiment proved the equations in your philosophy wrong, who cares? The equation has to survive, which is really kind of goofy. I don't know where he got this idea from. Now, on this, one of my friends is his own Redcliffe, and he's a PhD in physicist. And I showed him my chapter 3 in God's Day of Judgment on this theory of multidimensional reality, and also the one on the model that created the Hebrew alphabet. And he said, Doug, you have found the philosophy that string theorists have been looking for. And after I read enough about string theory, he was probably right. But my theory more shows that both quantum mechanics and string theory are partially right and partially wrong. These two camps, I should call them, really hate each other's guts, and one tries to prevent the other from speaking even in public events. It's kind of weird. String theory is kind of weird. Closed-end string theory has like 10 dimensions, and M theory, which is the combining of both of them, of two that are out there, has 13 dimensions. These are unprovable. Can't prove it at all. It's just, you take it on faith. It's like a religion now. And it says it borders both on faith, not science. In science, unobserved speculations do not disprove observed facts. But that's the way it is. That's the state of affairs we have right now with math. All right, this is the last of it. Why did our science change? This is a 2nd century Roman bust of Aristotle. Now, I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to explain in video series 12. This is 1A. Who this guy is and who's really behind it? What you really, I'll put it like this. You know the size of the library I've got and what I've researched. There is, I found an Aristotle mentioned in the Greek writers who are really Greek. It's important. They only mention an Aristotle as an admiral in Alexander the Great's navy, never as a philosopher. He does not show up at all in any of the books of Plato. He's only inserted by footnote by the translator. Usually like saying, Aristotle said the same thing. Well, that only means plagiarism. So, I'll give you some more clues. So keep in mind, there was an Aristotle who was an admiral in Alexander the Great's navy. The one who first mentions him is Strabo. Now, I have the series of Strabo. Now, Strabo is listed as a geographer. That was his hobby. His full name was Julius Caesar. Strabo was the family name. His hobby was geography. The countries he conquered, he wound up writing about. Just like an admiral who was, following along with Alexander the Great, he's writing about the places he saw and the people he saw and conquered. So Strabo mentions him only as a geographer. Now, the reason why his writings were never truncated or destroyed is because it was the emperor. That's why they couldn't destroy it. But the other disciples that are mentioned in it, their writings have disappeared. The other person who mentions an Aristotle, that story, anyway, Strabo mentions, he says, that a Roman general, after they took over Greece, had the only copy of the works of Aristotle. Now, obviously, he had access to the original Aristotle stuff. And he says it was sold to a family of ill repute. The family he's talking about, and the person specifically, was Lucius Calpurnius Piso. Now, his house had a very large library, and it was found near Rome. And that's why J. Paul Getty, when he built his house in San Simeon, just north of LA, he modeled it after Lucius Calpurnius Piso's house. Gee, I wonder why he did that. Well, you'll find out. Anyway, he's the one who had the copy, the only copy of an author that predates them by 300 or 400 years. Okay. So I've told you enough, but basically, it should get your mind working. There's a reason why the Catholic Church loved this guy. They loved him because they also knew who he really was. And I don't think he looked like that, but I will show you who he was and what he did look like. And then you'll understand how our science has been manipulated. And this is the reason why I did this part of the tape, is so you understand where we have been and why we are in the mess we are stuck with this matter theory of existence. Anyway, Dihole Foundation, 501c3, we accept contributions to continue the work. And this explains the other work we're going to do. I'm going to beat you over the head with it. DiholeFoundation.com. And the channel we have on YouTube is Dihole Foundation. We'll put it on some other video stations also. I hope you enjoyed it. There are going to be more. I'll be doing some more within April of 2018. I'll have at least 8 or 9 more up.